Darkness, dead parents. I cannot get that song out of my head whenever I see Lego Batman. Hello everyone, David here. So I managed to review Lego Batman 2 DC Superheroes some time ago, so I figured it would be appropriate using my newest re-subscription of GameFly to rent this game out and check it out, because when it comes to these Lego games, I like them, but I would never go as far to spend a good 40 to 50 maybe, and let alone $60 on these games, because they're the kind of games that I'd play once and I'm probably not going to play again. As much as I enjoy them, there's no humongous replay value for me because of the type of game it is. I mean, sure, there's plenty of stuff to do after the main story, and each game has its own version of that, but I just don't see myself playing either Lego Batman 2 or Lego Batman 3, once again for that matter, because Lego games have never had that much of a lasting appeal to me as much as I would enjoy it initially. But Lego Batman 3 is a special case. It's a special case in my heart, emotionally, because I have a little bit of a novelty type connection with this game. Because as much as I enjoy Lego Batman 2, once they announced that Lego Batman 3 was coming, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll check it out later on down the line. Unaware that a little while later, I was going to go to this little event in San Diego called Comic-Con 2014. And when I was there, I managed to check out the panel for Lego Batman 3. It was one of the few panels that I was actually able to get into, because I looked at the schedule and I'm like, okay, what can I check out that is not crowded with people, I don't have to wait any kind of line for, and I wouldn't mind checking it out. And I saw on the itinerary that said Lego Batman 3. And so I checked it out. They had Greg Miller there from IGN, or at least at the time he was in IGN. He was the host, and they brought in all the voice actors and the developers that were working on the game, and then they brought in Adam West. And I managed to get this shirt as well as a poster from said event. And so, because of that, I have a little bit of a connection with that game. However, I can use this to my advantage, because with this, and by the end of the review, you'll know why, I can use this as to my advantage to tell you guys that just because I have some kind of connection with a game, whether it be a past event, or I know somebody who worked on the game, if I were to actually know somebody that works in video games, because I don't, but if I were to be in that situation, I can tell you guys right now, I am not biased. Because even though I enjoyed this game, it has several issues that makes this so far my least out of the two that I've played in this series. I've never played the first one, but I did play 2 and 3, and so far I prefer 2 over 3, and I'm hoping to take the series in a different direction after playing this one. Now, how can this be so? Well, let's start off with the story. This time, Batman has to reunite with the Justice League from the second game once again to take down Brainiac, who has managed to find a way to harness the powers of all the lanterns from across the galaxy to be able to control planets and add them to his collection. So it's up to Batman and the rest of the Justice League to stop him, and that's an issue right there. Why call your game Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham if you're going to have all of the Justice League in there? Okay? Actually, not even just the Justice League, but you also got Superman's villains in there, you got Batman's villains in there, you even got a villain from the Wonder Woman universe, Cheetah, and they're not just in the story, but they're playable. And they're actually one of the main characters that at some point, and I don't know if this is considered a spoiler, but at some point, villains and heroes have to join forces to take down Brainiac. And that wouldn't be so much of an issue if Batman was still the center character, because even though Lego Batman 2 did have the Justice League in there as well as some other villains outside of the Batman universe, Batman still felt like the main character, and therefore it felt justified for the game to be called Lego Batman 2. Here, there's sections of the game where you go a while without playing as Batman. You play as all these other characters. In fact, there were points where I even felt like you were playing as Robin way more than you were playing as Batman. And at that point, I was just like, why don't you just call this Justice League game, Lego Justice League? They already kind of did that with Marvel. You got Lego Marvel Heroes. So why not do that with the DC Universe? Have the next game be called Lego DC Universe, or Lego DC Heroes, or Lego Justice League, and be practically the same thing as Lego Batman 3, only this time go through with that idea instead of still trying to keep the score, Danny Elfman's score in there, playing it on a continuous loop, which I love. But at a point, I was kind of getting just a little tired of it because every time I would boot up the menu, Danny Elfman's score is right there playing back and forth. And as much as you love something, if you get too much of it, you're gonna get sick of it. Okay, it happens with everything. As much as you love something, you're gonna get sick of that thing if you play it over and over, or if you watch it over and over. And I felt the same thing happening with Danny Elfman's score. And so I feel like the next game, should Traveler Tales make one, should be more geared towards the Justice League, or maybe even just Superman or Wonder Woman, instead of just keeping the Lego Batman name, which chances are they will, being that there's a new movie centered on just Lego Batman, spinning off from the Lego movie. But if they were to make another game, just call it Justice League. And sadly, that's not where the issues with the story end. I felt like this time around, the story felt a little disjointed and disconnected, because at the beginning, you got Brainiac coming in, who's a Superman villain, by the way, in a game called Lego Batman 3. He comes in, he takes over the powers of the Lanterns, and then you cut back to the Justice League taking down not just Batman's villains, but also Superman's villains, a little bit of Cheetah in there for Wonder Woman. And you spend a good section of the game doing this, and then the game brings in Brainiac. And then after a while, Brainiac literally gets shoved to the side, and then you're on this section of the game that kind of slows down the pacing, and you have to go to these different planets across the galaxy to get everything in order with the Lanterns. And I just felt like we were just jumping back and forth between scenarios, to where the game almost forgot about the previous things that it was doing within the story. And I'm like, this just feels very uncohesive. And I know that this is a game that is supposed to appeal to all demographics, mainly kids. And at a point, you look at the story and you think, okay, kids are not going to care about this. They're just going to care about playing as Batman or playing as Superman. But that's just it. This encompasses all demographics. That's the thing that Lego has always done, is that it's always had that humor and that heart, which is still here. I'm not saying that it's just completely obliterated, because the characters are still intact, and the voice acting behind these characters, like Troy Baker as Batman or Travis Willingham as Superman, they still nail the characters very well and bring us their own spin to those characters. And they're still very well written, and they're still very, very faithful to those interpretations of those characters. And like I said, that Lego humor that I've always loved is still there. Sure, your characters are not silent like they used to be in those early games, but that heart and that charm that Lego has always had is still there. It's just a shame that the story is disjointed, and because it appeals to all demographics, including adults, us adults are going to take notice of the very disjointed story. And what the hell are up with these cameos? I knew Adam West was going to be in the game because, again, I was at that panel and they brought in Adam West and they announced that he was going to be a part of the game. He's essentially that civilian you always have to save in each mission. In every mission, there's a civilian. And the previous games, especially in the Lego Batman games, they would have this civilian that needed to be rescued. This time around, Adam West is that one, spitting out one-liners, making references to his show, that kind of thing. And that was kind of cool, a little bit of a novelty factor. But then, out of nowhere, you got all these other cameos. Like you see here, that's Conan O'Brien. And that's actually his voice. As soon as he started talking, I'm like, oh shit, that really is Conan O'Brien. What is he doing here? Okay, from time to time, he even makes jokes about how he doesn't really like video games, so why is he here? And then later on, you're exploring the Watchtower, and there's all these other cameos that I'm not going to spoil for you, because there's a little bit of fun of discovering these people throughout the Watchtower, and some are appropriate that, I don't mind spoiling. Like, for example, Aquaman and these other DC Universe characters are in there, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. But then there's these other ones where I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? It just felt very out of left field. Now, I should note that I did play this on the PlayStation 4, and I don't know if this is the same case with last-gen systems, but I feel like I need to give credit to Traveler's Tales for at least trying their best to update little details within their game to make it somewhat consistent with the next generation of consoles, because it could be really easy to just render this game because it's Lego. It's supposed to be cartoony. In fact, when I booted it up, I'm like, okay, this is probably going to look exactly like the PlayStation 3 versions, because I just can't imagine what they could possibly do to make this game look better than how it actually looks at the moment. I'm like, okay, it's Lego. They're plastic bricks. How can you make that look all detailed and nice? I was actually kind of proven wrong, because from time to time you got some cinematic cutscenes where the lighting is really good, and I liked how whenever they would cut up close to a character, you could actually see a little bit of the reflection of their environment within those plastic pieces. So if a plastic piece is supposed to be supposed to look like silver or gold, you can actually see a little bit of the reflection. And I'm like, I don't know why, but I get the feeling details like that wouldn't they wouldn't have paid that much attention to that in previous versions of not just this, but also the other Lego games. I mean, you could see little faint details like a little bit of a light reflection here and there, but there would be moments where I would feel like, okay, these are actually plastic pieces. I mean, sure, it's kind of cartoony and silly, but it would still look like a good game. And I mentioned already the voice work is very good by the cast of actors here, and everybody does a great job, even if it's supposed to be Lego and they're supposed to be over the top and cartoony. It still felt like I was playing a Saturday morning cartoon, but one that I liked, one that I enjoyed, and took me back to good old times. But what I definitely appreciate about these Lego games is the fact that they take from the source material and give you that nostalgia feeling. Like, of course, being that it's Lego Batman, you got Danny Elfman's score in there. And whenever you play as Superman and you take off, you hear the John Williams score, and they even use that in some of the cutscenes later on in the game. But the one that surprised me a bit more was the fact that when you play as Wonder Woman and you start flying, they play the Wonder Woman theme song from the TV show, from the Linda Carter TV show, and I'm like, that's neat. And it's little neat things that Lego still does in this game, despite my issues with the story. It's little novelty details like that that still give that heart and that charm. My only issue is that from time to time there is a little bit of a graphical error, whether it be a little floating object in the game or during the cutscene. Sometimes whenever a character would move really fast, I noticed a little bit of screen tearing within their face. But besides that, it's still a very good looking game. And being that it's a Lego game, gameplay is exactly the same. They didn't bother to tweak too much with it, except for giving you some more suits as mainly as Batman, as Cyborg, as Robin. They get an onslaught of suits that they can use in these puzzles, which I'll admit were pretty clever. Every now and then I would have an awful lot of fun solving some of these puzzles, but at the same time I would scratch my head from time to time. I'm like, wow, this is actually kind of interesting. It's not just some chore that I need to push myself through. I was like, okay, this is actually kind of fun trying to figure out some of these puzzles. I mean, they're not Portal style puzzles, but they're still, again, charming and heartwarming enough to look at this puzzle and go, wow, you actually put some thought into this. My issue, however, is that for some strange reason, I couldn't put my finger on it. The gameplay doesn't feel that refined. A good example that I can use is that, much like in previous Lego games, you destroy things, and whenever you destroy things or defeat enemies, you either get some heart for your health or you get some coins that you can collect throughout the game, and you can also destroy certain objects so that then you can rebuild something out of that game, and maybe you can also take all these other pieces and use a specific suit to use on those pieces. Like, for example, Robin has this vacuuming hazard suit that allows him to scoop up pieces, put them in this container, and then this container would then take those pieces and form them into a new object that you can use in another puzzle. And these gameplay elements would be fun, but ever so often they would feel a little unrefined, to where it just felt like they took a previous engine that didn't really mix all that well with how the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4 work nowadays, that it just felt kind of clunky and weird. Like, for example, whenever I would fight a wave of enemies, it just didn't feel good. Pressing the square button, sometimes I would actually get I would get hit more often than I would hit them for some strange reason. And whenever I would build something, is it just me, or did it feel like the characters were going a little bit slower? There would be often where there would be this sense of momentum in previous games, especially Lego Batman 2. There would be this momentum where I can defeat a set amount of enemies, and then from there I can destroy some objects and put together this object that I'm going to use in a puzzle or on a door or whatever. And here it just felt off. I just can't pinpoint it, but there was something about that momentum that was off completely. And much like with the gameplay, there's other elements that you could do before in previous Lego games that you can do here. You can still do the co-op with a local player. Yeah, you can have a second player jump in with another controller and help you out. Although it's still restricted to local, so if you want to play with somebody online, which I kind of prefer, like I've said it before in many reviews, I prefer to play somebody that's next to me so I can actually talk to them instead of someone over the internet and they're just going and doing whatever the hell they want without any kind of instruction. I prefer local play, so this kind of favors me. But if you wanted to play with somebody online, if you can't find anybody to play with, that's still going to be an issue because the game doesn't allow you to do that. You can only play it locally with somebody next to you. But it still gives you the option to have a second player jump in and help you out and mess around with. And after you beat the main story or any level as you go on, you can always revisit that level and undergo free-to-play, where at your own pace, without the obligation of the story, you can do many things. You can uncover certain objects, you can collect certain pieces to form that object after every level. You can collect those the coins, you can collect those little Batman barrels, you can save Adam West if you weren't able to do so before, and there's plenty of other areas of the level that you couldn't get to before because you haven't unlocked the proper character. And after you complete the main story, you can then take whatever character you have unlocked, go back and use that character to reach certain areas that you couldn't before and collect all the collectibles and all that fun stuff. And this gives completists, which are mainly going to be the adults, because trust me, kids, after beating the story, they're not going to want to revisit this, so they're just going to want to move on to the next thing, or maybe replay the story so that they can watch the cutscenes or something. But if you are a completist, there's plenty of stuff to do after the main story, such as collecting all those fun collectibles or unlocking different characters like Deathstroke here. But being that the gameplay wasn't all that refined and I did have some issues with the story, there was no feeling of wanting to play this game again after beating it. And so I definitely did not revisit it like completists will. And being that they were pushing for this being part of the huge celebration of Batman turning 75, and they brought in Adam West to give it that novelty factor. In fact, the entire end credits scene is a definite throwback to the 60s era of Batman. It made me wonder that this game would have been better off being a time-traveling story to 1960s era Batman. That would have been perfect, because it's Lego Batman, so obviously you don't need to go into a humongous explanation of how Batman goes through some kind of wormhole or whatever and time travels back to the 60s and he becomes 60s era Batman, and you could have brought in Adam West to be an actual character in the story instead of just being the civilian that needs help in every level. That, to me, would have been perfect for a game that is entitled Lego Batman 3, instead of throwing in the entire Justice League, all of Batman's and Superman's villains, going up against Brainiac, who harnessed the powers of the lanterns, and you just got everything mixed into there. It's like you take flavors of ice cream that you like, but then you mix it all together, and it doesn't taste bad. In fact, it tastes a little good. But there's moments where I feel like I would enjoy these flavors by themselves, separately, and maybe add a few little like sprinkles or cookie crumbles or stuff like that. That's the best analogy that I can think of to summarize my feelings for Lego Batman 3. So for that, I give Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham a solid 7 out of 10. I still enjoyed it, still had fun with the humor and the heart that Lego still has in their games and Traveler Tales still has in their games. But should they make a fourth Lego Batman game, definitely take my idea of having him time travel to the 60s. That's what this game should have done, and that would be the best direction. Otherwise, just make a Justice League game. So let me know what you guys thought of Lego Batman 3 Beyond Gotham if you have played it. But if you would like to purchase the game after watching my review, regardless of what I said, then be sure to use the link in the description below. It will really help me out a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Darkness!